Farther along, we'll know all about it. Farther along, we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by.
Hello and welcome to this interview with Milton Pullen, the conductor of the Bay Area Chorus of Greater Houston. And Milton, I understand you're quite a music aficionado, and you also are a person of faith. So let's start with the first, and then we'll go into the faith aspect of this column here in just a minute. But talk about your experiences with music, how you got involved, and where has it led you so far?
Well, first of all, I was raised in the church. I was baptized on December the 4th, 1955. I was 12 years old. I was raised in a Church of Christ family. My mother and dad had a fifth and sixth grade education. They were hard workers. My dad worked as a welder, and my mother raised 6 children. And we were raised on Southern gospel music. So our entertainment after supper at night was singing gospel music. So I was raised in a music family, but most of it was country, gospel, church music of that nature. So when I was baptized, I began to lead singing on Wednesday nights at church. Later, when my leading got a little better, I was allowed to lead sing a little on Sunday night and then eventually Sunday morning. And so that was my background early on in music. Then probably my first love on a secular basis was playing baseball. I wanted to be a baseball player, but I couldn't do that and go to church on Sunday because there were games on Sunday. So that was a problem, especially for my mother and for me also. There's no doubt about that. But I wasn't all that good at baseball. I was average, maybe a little above average, but overall baseball was my love, but it wasn't my calling. And my brother, who is 7.5 years older than me and is in the Bay Area Chorus singing, was an inspiration to me because he was in a high school choir, and we'd go to his concerts when I was in the elementary school. And I'd listen to his choirs. I remember him to this day, just like it was yesterday. And how I wanted to, one of these days, be in a choir like his and to sing that music that they sang. I could even tell you now what the titles were. So that was a lasting memory to go to his concerts. And so he was an inspiration to me. And so when it came time to go to college, I could go as a baseball player and play a little baseball at San Jack College over here on Spencer. At that time, it was near the Washburn Tunnel. They had just opened up San Jack College, and it was in some rental buildings over in old downtown Pasadena. I could either go there and play a little baseball or major in music, and I chose music. So that's been my background as far as music is concerned. Finished up at Texas A&I University, which is now Texas A&M at Kingsville, down in Kingsville, and then started teaching in Freer, which is a little town of a population of 250 kids in the school. 7 of those kids are going to be at my concert this next week. They're in their 70s. They're in their middle 70s. And, it goes from there. That was in 1965, and so 58 years later, I'm at the point now of doing my last concert.
Okay, and when you got done teaching music there, did you continue? Obviously, you continued to pursue it. So talk about that time between teaching it in the school and where you're at now. Were there other projects, or did you get involved with different groups, and kind of fill in that space for us?
Okay, well, my my love was teaching in the classroom. So most of my career was teaching, rehearsing in public schools. Started out at Freer and then moved to Clear Creek in '68 and taught 21 years in the Clear Creek system. Actually, and that was a split. That was split between other jobs that I had. For example, in '79, I left Clear Lake High School and went to ACU, Abilene Christian University. Was the director of choral activities there for 6 years, '79 to '85. Then came back to Clear Creek because I missed my high school kids, and taught there another 10 years. And by then I had taught 30 years. And from there I went to Pepperdine University and taught 16 years. And when I left Pepperdine in 2011, we moved to Colorado because we had a house there, and so that was the place to move. And while I was at Colorado, the president of the Bay Area Chorus called and asked me if I would come and direct their spring concert because their director was leaving. And so I came in and worked with the choir, the Bay Area Chorus, and directed their spring concert. And then the next year we moved to this area, and I started directing them in 2014. So this is the end of my 9th year with the Bay Area Chorus. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Well, very good. Well, so you've got quite a varied experience with, academic and then also academia with working in the local choir and stuff like that. So tying that into your faith, you started the interview off talking about when you were baptized, and then your entry into singing was through the church, your local church you went to. What church was that?
That was the Channelview Church of Christ, which was on 2nd Street in Channelview. There were 2 churches of Christ in Channelview. One was a Sunday school church, and we didn't go to Sunday school. So we went to the non-Sunday school Church of Christ. On a good day, on a Sunday morning, we'd have 40 in our congregation. That was a crowd. So I was raised there at Channelview. And later, as got married in 1966, started raising children, we broadened our thinking about where we wanted to go to church, and dabbled a little bit in the non-Sunday school church that had a paid preacher. And that was a little bit of a tough time because my parents didn't believe in paid preachers. So, but we got through that, and then eventually moved to Clear Lake City. Well, Clear Lake Church of Christ is what it's called, and which is a Sunday school church. Started going to church there and working as a minister of music. Most of that started really back at ACU. In 1979, when I started as a minister of music at the Northeast. I think it's Northeast. Maybe it's Northwest. Maybe it's Northwest Church of Christ. My goodness, that goes back a ways. And but it was a non-Sunday school church. But I was the minister of music there. I don't know if that was my title, but I led singing on Sunday mornings. And then when we moved back to Clear Creek in 1985, I started out as the director of a small group at the Main Street Church of Christ in South Houston, which was a non-Sunday school church, but they had a paid preacher. And they called him a minister, and we were taught that we're all ministers, so that was a little bit of an adjustment we had to make, and that type of thing. Then eventually we left Main Street and went to Clear Lake Church of Christ. Choir and how that fit into into church was my kids, especially in high school, more probably than university, even though I went to Christian universities to teach. My kids in high school, choir was church for them. Many of them were unchurched kids, but they learned about life and a lot about living in choir. It was, and that's why they're so close to me now. I have 14 kids. I think it's 14, or I've had 14 kids in the Bay Area course that are my former students. And next Sunday, there will be probably close to 50 former students from every school I've ever taught at that will be at that concert. So the connection of choir in the classroom and church was very close. And so through choir, I taught a lot about life. And if we were singing something that was sacred, a lot about Christianity in it, even though it was a public school. But I was pretty much grounded. My administrators supported me because they knew what choir meant to those kids. And so I could do just about what I wanted to as a teacher. So that's one connection. The other one is that because of my degrees in music, I shared with the church a seminar that I called Face the Music. And so I would go to various churches, especially while I was at Pepperdine, and work with churches in California and Oregon and Idaho and New Mexico and Colorado and lots of different churches of Christ, and hold these seminars called Face the Music. And they were all about how music and words bond to form a dimension of expression, one without the other you wouldn't have. And even though a lot of them didn't know a whole lot about music, I could show them how music enhanced words and enhanced worship. So I did a lot of teaching of call Face the Music with that in those seminars. Haven't done much of that in the last 8 or 9 years.
Okay. And so with all the songs that you've sung from the time you started to where you're at now, you sung lots of hymns and lots of contemporary songs and some of the classics. Hymn-wise, keeping this faith-based for just a second, what are some of those hymns that you think, I guess looking back at your experience, would still consider your favorites? Have they changed? Have you had some favorites when you were young and maybe they're not so much your favorite anymore and you've got new ones, or are there some classics that just stay with you?
Well, goodness. I would say there are many of those numbers of those hymns that I was raised with that are with me and will remain with me forever. And they are, to me, the foundation of what the church should be singing. I love some of the modern things, and there's some great music that's modern music. But the songs that some people consider a little dusty need to be revived because they're near and dear to my heart, because they have good theology, they are written well, and a lot of the modern music today is not all that well written. And so I would say probably It Is Well With My Soul, which is the number we're singing Sunday night at this concert. It is probably one of those. We're also singing Amazing Grace Sunday. at our concert. Those are numbers, but there's Southern gospel that'll always be naturally a part of my life, and numbers that I treasure. Albert Brumley, from I'll Fly Away to If We'd Never Meet Again was my mother's favorite song. Many Southern gospel will always be. And, I'm a Gaither fan. I go back to the Chuck Wagon Gang that you've never heard of. But anyway, the Chuck Wagon Gang was a little guitar country ensemble that was very popular on radio back when my dad was growing up, and to some extent when I was growing up, but that goes back a ways. So Southern gospel is still near and dear to me. Shape note music. I cut my teeth on shape note music. So all of that music is my roots, and it will always be. I don't know that I could say there was a particular number that has stuck with me all of these years, but I can tell you there's a lot of them that mean a lot to me.
If I may be getting her name wrong, and I know you would know this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, is it Fran Crosby or Franny, the one that composed Fanny composed 8,000 hymns, and she was blind, and yes. Some of the music that she's composed are just the timeless classics. And Milton, what would you say is it that makes a hymn, just focusing on the hymn tradition for a minute, so powerful? Because you can hear certain songs and you'll see people tear up. I've seen song leaders that even themselves, they may have led that song 1,000 times, but for some reason the stars all aligned, and even them, they may have had a hard time, and take a breath and let the audience continue singing. Yeah. What is it about that? Is it the composition? Is it the words? Or is it both?
It's both. Music was here in the beginning, and there's something about music that enhances, enriches words, that when you bond them together, that dimension of expression will tear you up in some music. There's also there's memories that music brings back that has a lot to do with how it affects you in the present. So a lot of things probably come into what made a piece of music so inspirational to a congregation and to an individual. But certainly the music, I think probably the one thing that in the Church of Christ that we've missed is that we have made words more important than the music. And if that was the case, why do we sing? Why don't we just recite? And it's just not. The music has a lot to do with why the words become defined and inflected and really sink into our souls. So to some degree, we have ignored that part in our worship service in the Church of Christ, and I think that's sad.
There's a big push with certain churches, and it's nothing new. It's been going on probably at least a couple of decades now. There's a big push for more contemporary, uplifting music. Some people would look at hymns and say some of them are too sorrowful, and we want to be uplifted these days. We want more of that experience, that positive experience. What would you say about that? I know you touched on a little bit of that earlier, that you like the hymns, and they certainly need to be fundamental in any church, but surely there's room for contemporary music as well. What would you say about that previous question? And also, what is a balance? Like, in your mind, what is a balance between the traditional music and making room for the contemporary music?
Well, first I'd say there's a lot of good modern contemporary music that's really well written and excellent. And probably if you go back to the music that I grew up with, there's a lot of music back then that wasn't very good. So even in contemporary music, there's some music that's not well written, and there's some really great music, and probably the same could be said about music of the times when I was growing up. So there's always good music and some music that's not well written. So that's to be kept in mind. But there's a lot of music, contemporary music nowadays, that is, I would call dessert music. And if all we want is dessert, we're going to be malnourished. We need depth in our music. If all we get is sugar, then we are going to be malnourished. If we think that, and what happens when you get addicted to sugar is you just need more sugar and more and more and more sugar. Well, that can go so far. I don't think that that's the music that enriches us, our spirit. I think that some of it is good. We need dessert. We definitely need it. But we also need the music that has depth to it. And the music that we tend to ignore is the music that has that depth. So we need the mix. We need the mix of the two. Definitely we need contemporary music, but we need music that has some depth to it and what it is and what it has to offer. And that's sad that we have not nourished our music from the standpoint of the depth of music that we need for the church to keep it really nourished. We need the meat of music as much as we need the dessert.
Okay. And just like spiritual music, Christian music, some of the secular music, though they call it secular music, I know what I'm referring to is your classic masterpieces. A lot of them would have very religious undertones, a lot of Bach's music and Beethoven. They were singing through their belief, though it would be, sometimes they would consider that secular music. Those pieces can move you emotionally and spiritually as well. What are some of your favorite classic masterpieces?
Oh my goodness. Beethoven's Mass in C just can't be beat. We did the Gounod St. Cecilia Mass last year, and although it's Catholic, it's absolutely scriptural. There's nothing in the Mass that we sing that's not lined up with Scripture. From the Credo, which is the creed, to the other movements that are within that in the Mass, it's all absolutely lined up with Christianity. So the Mass is a form of music I love, and I've done a lot of Masses, from Schubert to Beethoven to Gounod to, oh my goodness, many composers. Dvorak, as a matter of fact. We're doing the Te Deum, T-E-D, you'll see it on the papers there. That's our opener this year, and that's by Dvorak, and it is translated, We Praise Thee, O God. When we sing We Praise Thee, O God in church, we're singing the Te Deum. It just happens to be in Latin because that's the ancient text. There's the Luke 2, Mary's song, that is called the Magnificat. In Latin, the ancient text is called Magnificat. And I love a lot of the settings of that music. So the great text of the classic composers that they have set to music is amazing. That's why they are masterworks, because they knew their theology and they knew how to set music to that theology that created a dimension of expression that's just incredible in what they'll do. Come to the concert next Sunday and listen to the Te Deum. It's just amazing.
You mentioned earlier this will be your last concert.
Yes.
Why?
Because probably my last concert should have been about 10 years ago. It's just time. It's time to leave the stage. I'm leaving in some ways at my prime. I am doing well. My chorus loves me. I love them. We are at the top of our game. I know I'm at the top of my game. I could go on, but I'll be 80 years old on July the 19th of this year, and there's parts of it that I will miss terribly. That part, mainly rehearsing. We make our best music in rehearsals. I'm not saying that our concerts aren't good, but boy, what we do in a connection in rehearsal and making music has much more to do with how we relate to the text and work the music. And so I'll miss the rehearsals, but I won't miss a lot of the busy work that happens outside of rehearsal. That'll be a relief to be able to say, hey, that's done with, and it's time to move on. So, and I might do some church work. I don't know. It depends on whether or not a church gives me that opportunity. And so far around here, that has not particularly been the case.
You talked about feeling like you're in your prime. You surely have a wealth of knowledge and experience. But for a lot of people, they may not really understand what conductors do. They may think, well, they're setting the rhythm, they're waving the little baton, they're keeping everybody in sync. If you could give us the, standing back, not really hyper specific, but sort of the GED, if you will, the basic information on what conductors do. Tell us about that. What are your responsibilities?
Oh my goodness! Come to rehearsal tomorrow night, and I'll show you.
Well, I might. I might see behind the scenes. You get better context.
Now tomorrow night will be more of a concert. Our rehearsing is pretty much done. Tomorrow night they need to sing the music. I'm turning my responsibility of teaching them over to them, and it's time for them to take the responsibility of singing it. So tomorrow night will be more of a, okay, my part's done. It's your time to reflect what you've been taught. But we'll do some talking tomorrow night, and we'll be tweaking the music and things of that nature. But if you really want to see what happens, it's the rehearsal is where that happens. What was your question now? What?
Just the basic responsibilities of a conductor that maybe people don't really understand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know that they would understand, but it's far from waving your arms. It's about representing the composer and detective work. I mean, the composer puts some notation on paper, and then it's the director's job, the conductor's job, to do the detective work, to figure out the mystery. What is it behind those notes that the composer was thinking? And, it's called interpretation, but to some degree you've got to know a little bit about the composer and the background and what he's doing to deliver a message. So it's the director's job to kind of impart that to the choir so that they can impart that to the audience. So there's a lot that goes on in a rehearsal that the audience knows nothing about.
I know from some other creative endeavors I'm involved in outside of journalism. I own a dance studio, and so we do performances. And there's I'm very familiar with the production aspect and going in there and setting everything up, the setup and the breakdown. Where does the magic lie for you? Is the magic when it's all done and you finally walk up there in the nice tuxedo or the suit and you say, okay, now we're going to show this audience what we've put together, what all of our work's gone into? Or are there other magic points for you in the production process?
Well, I'll enjoy stepping up on the podium next Sunday and connecting with the orchestra and the choir and the soloist. There's no doubt that there'll be some magic that happens there that didn't happen in rehearsal, because there's some spontaneity that happens in that connection. But that's not where I live. At that point, my performance is over. My performance is on that stage, in that classroom, in that rehearsal hall, during rehearsal. If I don't perform there, the choir doesn't perform next Sunday. So my performance and the magic that I offer is in rehearsal. That's where it happens. That's what my kids remember. They don't remember the performances half as much as they remember the rehearsals, the fits I've thrown, the heart-to-heart talks we've had, those moments in which we made music and walked out of rehearsal in tears. Often that didn't happen in a concert, but it happened in a rehearsal. So it's my job is what happens. My performance is in rehearsal. My performance on stage is to wave my arms and remind the choir of what we did in rehearsal. And maybe they will reenact that magic that happened in rehearsal. We hope they do. And quite often they do.
A conductor's position, in particularly yours, do you consider yourself a performer or a guide, a supervisor? You're supervising the chorus. You're teaching them the cues and everything in the production side of it. But when you're up there and everything's a go, you're all primed to go, and you got that big audience out there, how much of what you do is performance, and how much of it is it just guiding the musicians to perform?
I don't do anything in a concert that I haven't done in rehearsal. There's nothing that I do differently. But I can tell you that in rehearsal, I do a lot. So when I'm in performance, it's just, there's not anything different. Now, I'll say this. When I conduct in a performance, I'm teaching the audience about the music. There's a connection that I want that audience to have with the music. And if I can help that connection through what I conduct, I'm going to do it. I'm going to teach them. And a lot of times the audience, I know from their reaction, they lock in on what I'm doing. And because they lock in on it, they learn something about what happened in that music. So yes, there is a connection. There's a teaching. What's the word? There's some teaching that goes on as I'm conducting. But do I do something flamboyantly that's different? I don't think so. I think what I do in rehearsal, and I'm a conductor, will not be any different when I get in front of the audience. Won't be one bit different. Now there may be more, it may be a little showier to some degree, but I doubt it. It's pretty genuinely what I do in rehearsal.
As someone in the audience, and of course I can't speak for everyone in the audience, but I know when I go to performances or I watch them on TV, you scan the choir, or I find myself scanning the choir / band / orchestra, whatever it may be, but I focus on the conductor. Do you feel that pressure of people focusing on you, maybe more so than others?
No, I don't feel that pressure. I guess I'm a little bit more keyed up about it. But if I've done my job in rehearsal, it's pretty natural for me to do my thing on the podium. It's not much different. I just have an audience out there, which I wish I really had in rehearsal. I'd like to see more people come to our rehearsals, because our rehearsals are concerts. Our rehearsals really are concerts. If they're not, then when those 118 singers leave and the next morning they get up at 5:30 to go to work, the next Monday night when they come back to rehearsal, some of them might think about, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. But if I leave them with an enriching rehearsal that has become a concert, somewhere in there's music that's happened, they'll come back. It's worth their while. So I don't know that I do. I don't know that in a concert I feel any different, really. I just can't talk as much and don't want to.
There are, in my opinion, there are people who sing, and then there are singers, and there are musicians.
Yes.
What's the difference?
I don't know. I'm not sure I've ever thought about that.
I can sing George Strait when it comes on the radio, but I'm not a singer. So what takes one from having an interest in singing and then actually making something of it? Is there how much natural talent falls into that, and how much can you train?
Well, I I think that if you can inspire people who don't have singing is not their livelihood. I mean, it is something they enjoy on the side. But if you can inspire them in singing, they can do things that maybe they would normally think that they had the ability to do. I think that's the case of probably most of my life. Most of my singers are amateurs. And what they do when they're singing George Strait is what I do too. I mean, a lot of my music, if you open that drawer over there right behind me and you looked at my CDs, you'd see George Strait, and you'd see Vince Gill, and you'd see Gaither, and a lot of music that I grew up with. So in a way, I'm kind of an amateur myself when it comes to singing some of that music. But I've learned to develop that through the inspiration I had and through my love for great composers and what they can offer. And when I can offer that to these amateur singers that like to sing, in the shower, they grow from it. So I think it's just a matter of our amateur singers that love just to sing can grow if they have a teacher in front of them that can inspire them to do things that they had no idea that they had in them as just the normal everyday person that likes to sing. We're all singers. I mean, we're sitting here right now with a heartbeat. We're sitting at a different pitch, at a certain pitch level. Everything about us is harmony. You're holding the mic right now with your arm while you're looking at me. So our eyes are seeing and our arms are holding the mic. That's called harmony. Everything about our lives is music. Everything. There's not a thing that we own or have that's not about music. It's about the components of harmony and rhythm and tempo and tone. Everything about life, even if it's man-made, is about music. And so basically anybody could learn to do what we do in Bay Area Chorus if they have that ability in the ear to hear it.
A lot of the emphasis of this column is faith in action. It's putting faith talents in action, doing something with what God's given you. And I know I was recently watching a podcast on YouTube, and there was an actor. His name is Chaz Palminteri. He was in The Bronx Tale, the old sort of mob movie in the 80s. And he was recalling when he first got into acting, and he said his dad used to have this quote. It said, "There's nothing worse in the world than unused talent." Mm-hmm. What do you feel about people who maybe they have a little bit of talent to do something, but they never really take the time to invest in it? Maybe they never develop something that could be used for something that could not just enrich in other people's lives, but help spread, God's message, God's word out there.
I think it's sad, in a way. In another way, I think people make music their life also lose something. I know that I was born to be a choir director, and I was able to develop that gift. There are other people that were probably born to be choir directors that did not, but in a way, they may have a heart for God and for music that I lost because it's become my profession. There might be an innocence and a tenderness that they have for music that they didn't develop into something so serious. See, all the music that I hear, even at church this morning, my ear hears critically. And so when I hear, I don't mean by that I hear bad tones and I hear bad pitches and I hear this and that, and I critique that. I don't mean that. But I hear other singers in the church that didn't develop music as I have, that probably have a heart for God that is just as important in how they've approached their music as mine is in my profession as music, because I hear it with a critical ear to some extent. So I don't know that developing their talent had to become their life's ambition to the point that I have. Now, there's things that has enriched my life through music that they won't have. But I don't know that gift had to be so developed that it became a critical thing. And I adjudicate music. When I watch a conductor, I watch to see what they're doing, and I watch the good things they do and not the good things they do. So I'm a conductor, so I'm always locked into that conductor. Whereas if I could, I would enjoy the music probably the way somebody that's not so developed into it would enjoy it. And sometimes I envy that a little bit.
I've heard it said that sometimes you can kill a certain amount of your passion by making something your profession, and maybe making it too mechanical. Yeah, that's true.
That's absolutely. We have people with doctorate degrees that have learned a lot about music through books that never really developed their heart. And then we have people that have never taken a course in music at all, that have a heart for music that I wish I had, perhaps, to some degree.
So we talked about this being your last concert. So hopefully it's not your last concert. I know, with musicians and artists and everything, it's one thing to take the break, but it's always in your blood, and maybe you come back and do something with it. Who knows? For people who are going to come to the concert, what should they expect? Give us a little bit of a preview.
Well, when the timpani starts that roll on the Dvorak Te Deum, they're going to be mesmerized. It is amazing, the opening number that we're singing, but they won't understand a word that we're singing. Now, we have a translation in the program, but you can't follow the translation. Can't understand basically what the choir is singing all the time anyway, to stay with the translation. But they will be locked in to what is happening because it's amazing. Then we're going to sing a Brahms piece that's in German. And they won't understand it either, but the beauty of it and the overall music of Brahms is just gorgeous. Then eventually we're going to get to that music which is sentimental to me. We're singing It Is Well With My Soul. We're singing Angel Band, which is not a number that we've sung a lot in the church, but it is one that they will connect to. Those people that have heard that one before will connect. And then we're ending with Amazing Grace with bagpipes and the full orchestra. And it's going to be one of those concerts that if we can pull it off, and I think we can, it'll be an ambitious concert, but one I think that everybody that goes away from there will say, my goodness, I've never heard anything quite like it, inspirationally especially. Now, we're a community choir. We're not a professional choir. But it will be one that a lot of heart goes into this concert. That heart will be reflected in the choir's music and what they're doing, because they will reflect my heart, and it'll be there. And The audience won't forget it. None of us will. Now we're singing again in the summer. On July the 19th, I'll turn 80 years old, and 3 days later, we're singing in San Antonio. So we're singing for the Texas Choral Directors Association convention at the Lila Cockrell Theater on at the San Antonio. Forgot the name of that convention center, but anyway, San Antonio Convention Center. So we're singing again, but that's an away concert, and it's a 30-minute concert, and this is really my last local concert. So, yeah, there are other concerts that'll probably be out there at times, guest clinicking and that type of thing. Okay. But this is the last one. Yeah. Okay. Those that go to San Antonio will be those that can. So, and that'll be quite a few singers.
If people have an interest in joining the Bay Area Chorus, what are you looking for? What's the process like? Who would it be an ideal fit for?
There's an audition process. We're looking for people that have some background in music. We want them to be able to know something about notes, so they'll sight read a little bit. But overall, it's not difficult to get into the Bay Area Chorus. There are auditions for it. That probably scares a lot of people a little bit, but it's not all that difficult. It's not so strenuous that you can't make the choir. We have people that can read, that are talented. We have people that have degrees in music, and we have people that know very little about music, but they have the ear, and they can sing, and they can contribute.
And I guess the last couple of questions I've got for you, Milton. One, favorite verse. What's your favorite verse in the whole Bible? And how has that verse helped impact you in some way along your artistic journey, or no?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know what my favorite verse is in the Bible. It probably would be Romans 12 and verse 1. It's about sacrifice and worship, and our lives are sacrificial, and our lives are worship. One of my favorite, of course, John 3:16 is everybody's favorite. Yeah, I don't know that I have a particular verse that is my favorite. Colossians 3:16 is certainly important to me about music and about singing, but I don't have a particular verse, I don't think.
And I guess in conclusion, looking back at your career and the things you've done with music, do you feel like you've done everything you could do, or is there anything left you haven't done that you needed as a box you've still got to check off?
I don't think there's anything else, unless it's church work. I would give anything if I could have done more to help congregational singing. I'm not one that has to have scholars in front of me to sing. I enjoy working with the normal, everyday, average singer and teaching them what it is about music that makes it worshipful. If there's one thing that I feel like that has been missing, it's been to be able to teach congregations what worship is really about when it comes to music, 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 when it comes